Just without further ado, we are running a tad bit late. We'll introduce our next session. Put an end to data silos. Enable better business decisions with a true 360 view of your company. And I would like to welcome our speaker, Markus Mechnich, Team Lead Sales Engineering at InterSystems GmbH. Thank you, Markus.
Thank you. Okay, put an end to data silos and enable better operational and analytical business decisions with a real 360-degree view and access to all of your data and functionalities in your company. So first of all, I got a bit of a headache to describe what is a data silo. So I scanned the internet and compiled down 3 phrases which I think describe it quite well. So one thing is data resides isolated, typically in departments or in geographical locations. It's bound into operational systems, and maybe for similar tasks you have different plants and different softwares where the same data resides. Maybe if you are in manufacturing, you have MES systems and not the same everywhere. So they are quite different in accessing. Another possibility is to describe it as not all users who would benefit from that data in those systems, in those data silos, are able to wholly get to their data. So they need to ask the IT department to do an export or to ask a colleague to provide the data. Another thing would be that data silos might be something challenging to integrate. It's not so easy. They don't have those real standard protocols. They are not so open. And for that one task you need to solve, it's too expensive because there's too much time and cost in integrating that one. So how could we embrace and integrate data silos? Of course, you all heard of data catalogs, so you need to know where the data resides, how you can access it. So another thing is you want to get an idea of where the data comes from, especially if you're in analytics. So in analytics, data gets aggregated, enriched, and there needs to be trust in all the ways. So how do you explain where the data you see as a high-level business users, how does that come from the data sources itself? Data quality, of course, it needs to be cleaned, it needs to be structured and enriched. For some cases, it's important to get those data from data silos into real time. So we have in financial services, we have trading applications, and they need to get information from other operational systems to be in that point of time the trade should be done, to just before also say if it's good or not good to do that trade. So you have really high demands on real time. The same is true if you look to manufacturing. If you look at machines you like to monitor, and if one machine fails, you need to immediately know that. So that's another point where you have integration necessities, and that need to be fulfilled by integrating those data silos. Access control. Okay, you can get data out of a data silo, but what about data protection? So you still need to ensure that only the people who are allowed to see the data will get access to it. And in some cases, you want to have auditing, so standard logging to when was data accessed or even modified in those systems. Data governance, from my point of view, it's more an outside organizational project which goes aligned with integrating the overall systems in a company. And there you need to define roles, responsibilities, and processes, how to follow, given some policies, how people should conduct to access the data. And that's also extremely important, but not necessarily pure IT. So some weeks ago, we held a HEISE webinar, and we did ask for the challenges in using data. And it was, of course, volume and the increase of data to be able to scale with the data coming in. It was about metadata, which is in the subsystems, but not so nicely available, so you have to add it. How about data protection and availability of IT experts? But for my surprise, there were these two others, availability of domain experts, which were mentioned, and the integration of systems and interfacing with 50% of those audience. So it's not representative, but that's what we just heard about 2 months ago. So I don't know how you see it. Maybe you can also have your own thoughts of the challenges you face. So a short history. So the approaches to analytics in the 80s, there were decision support systems. In the 90s, data warehouses arise. So just after that, in 2000, you heard the term data mart, which is most likely connected to a data warehouse. It could be independent, but usually it's dependent to a data warehouse and is because of performance or more data which is joined so the business user can benefit from that as well. Nowadays, so since 2010, more and more companies just collected the data. So they use, this data could be useful, so just put it as it is in my lake and let the one who wants to use it then from the lake do his transformations. This led to, at least in medium and large IT departments, to a scenario like this. So it's not the operational part, it's more the analytics part. But you do see that you have several systems in the bottom in production. You might have warehouse management systems. You do have ERPs, MES, all those systems. You would have services. You do have systems for sales and marketing, and of course, some customer access. So those go to different data silos. So maybe in a data lake, in data warehouse, and most of them has way more than 2 data warehouses nowadays. So that's data warehouse from its definition should be 1 in each company. But what you see outside, it isn't. So sometimes some BI logic come with its only, or BI software came with its own data warehousing technology, so you just put it in place, and over time, this happened, these scenarios, and the business users on top using their tools, they don't have only one layer to go to, but they go to different ones. So today, what you see is that business analytics goes to data mesh and data fabric. So those are the architectures from the last 5 years, I would say. They are more and more common and discussed. And they are tackling especially those analytics, the data mining to enable AI, ML better to all the data, putting better to data visualization and self-service business intelligence. And what I think is quite important is the single source of truth. So you don't have several sources to trust, but only one. So that's, for me, the most important idea to all of it. Why are those approaches? So nowadays, there's so many information in the world, and you are, as a human, you can't judge it anymore. So human intuition is not anymore sufficient. It's prone to error. At least you need to verify it with your data and prove it. Data nowadays is much more valued. You integrate external sources like social media, something like weather if you are in the production area. You have more and more data with the 3 V's, velocity, volume, and variety of types. You see scaling and integration problems rising. With scaling, there's data storage and computing, which gets quite cost-intensive. And with integration, there's not only the technical integration, but also the semantic integration to get the data together so the data makes sense to what you ask for. So data mesh is a domain-oriented approach. You need a team for that domain. So typically, it's not in the companies nowadays that they have its own IT domain team. So you need organizational adjustments. It's typically federated and distributed data management. So each IT team in each domain has the responsibility to provide their data through APIs. But how they get to their data is to the teams. And, but the good thing is that the data which they offer is by domain expert and extremely clean and good for that reason. So that's one approach. It's a bottom-up approach. Another approach which I found even more attractive is the data fabric. Even though both things can be joined and used together to some extent, data fabric, it's much more top-down, so you come from the company view. You want to establish a holistic virtualization layer where in future all new requests go through that virtualization layer and are not bound anymore to the real operational systems. You use the existing IT infrastructure. So it's at the beginning just a layer on top of what you have. So it's very low risk. If you have to renew systems or add systems, you would choose for open system, which provide metadata and the data itself in a good manner. If you have that virtualization layer, so this can be monitored, there is data, there's messaging, you know, which users, which department requests which information. So you can apply AI, ML to that in an automated way and can benefit from that. And you have that one single source of truth. And that's, for me, an extremely important thing, as I mentioned already. So what would a modern data platform have to be sufficient for such an architecture? Of course, first-class integration. So you need to be able to very fast integrate any data source or functionality source systems you have, which are at least to some extent technically available. It needs to come with transparency, so you can define also the business processes in a nice way. and of course graphically, and you can do user or UI-based data transformations on that. So if it comes with excellent SQL and no SQL performance in data management, that would be also extremely nice thing. So if it would be a multi-model, to have multi-model access to the same data, not the necessity to copy the data just to have it in another model. So get object access to the data. The same data you can just access through SQL or document-based. And of course, it should be neutral to your platform. Should run in cloud, in hybrid, in multi-cloud, or on-prem. It should be low risk, so honor the existing systems. There's value in it. There's typically a lot of reason why those systems are in a company. So if you choose to replace, you need to have a good reason. And but over time, you reduce the turning wheels with such an approach, and you have, with that one platform, which goes with integration, goes with data management, you have only one system management. The data platform should have the ability of an application server. So any business logic or application logic should be able to be programmed in that data platform. It should be able to hold the AI ML. So if Python would be there, that would be nice inside the platform. Access control, of course, you need all the modern stuff like OAuth 2 if you do REST services, API management, all that. And it needs to bring trust to your business users. So what I learned that a lot of those high-level reports and business users don't really trust the data they have in reports because they can't really explain well how the data was aggregated and combined. So if you can do that, that would be also very nice. So that if you look for such a platform or you find that attractive, I think we're quite close to such a platform with our technology. So I'm open if you have any questions now. So otherwise, thank you a lot.